Your blood runs orange and blue. This is the pod for you. You're listening to Orange and Blue Bloods, hosted by EJ Stewart and Tommy Beer. Let's get to it, New York.
You like it? You think Cleveland's cool? I mean, I never heard anybody say I'm going to Cleveland on vacation. I mean, what's so good about Cleveland?
What is so good about Cleveland? Yes, we are on that energy for the next however many weeks we have to talk about this series coming up. It is playoff basketball. Knicks, Cavs, game one set for Saturday. This is EJ Stewart joined by Tommy Beer. This is Orange and Blue Bloods, a New York Knicks podcast, Audacy WFAN original. We will be talking about this Knicks series that we have coming up. First round against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Game one is set for Saturday, 6 p.m. I'll get Tommy Beer's thoughts on not just this game, but also kind of just where the season has gone for this Knicks team, how they compare to the 2021 team, and also kind of what we see from the Cavs and what we can expect from the Cavs in this series. We had plenty of time this week to talk about this series, so probably no predictions today, but we will certainly get into this series and this season for the Knicks so far. We also got to hear from a lot of the key Knicks for this playoff series. Julius Randle particularly did not speak to the media, but we did get some important updates from Tom Thibodeau regarding his progress recovering from his ankle injury. So you'll hear from Tom Thibodeau on what he had to say about Julius and his likelihood of playing in game one. And a little bit outside the purview of the playoff situation regarding the Knicks, but an important story nonetheless, not just for the Knicks, but the entire NBA. The league is investigating the Mavericks for alleged tanking after they decided to essentially pull the plug on their season, rest a lot of their players in what was supposed to be a crucial game for their play-in contention. And with them trying to hold on to their top 10 lottery protected pick that is supposed to go to the Knicks, now the league is investigating whether or not they violated any anti-tampering rules that the league has in place. So a very fascinating conversation about that. There are a lot of Knicks fans who have been telling me that they think the Knicks should get this lottery pick. So I think that's going to be a fascinating discussion as well. So we'll get to that towards the end of the show. So a lot to get to on this episode. Tommy joins me as always. Tommy, how are you feeling? What is so good about Cleveland?
Oh, man, we got a playoff series to preview, to think about, to talk about. And really, that's all you can ask for with Knicks fans and this fan base. Stuck loyally by the side of this franchise for the last 2 decades or so. Haven't had many such occasions to and there's nothing better than playoff basketball when every possession matters and you're feeling jittery and anxious, days ahead of time. It's just it's a wonderful experience, and we're going to get to experience that this week. The adjustments from game one to game two, and the pressure builds, and and this team has a lot of players that you can feel confident are going to shrink in the moment. These guys that have for their career, they got that dog in them, so to speak. And the Knicks have some dogs, and that's something you can take. Have some confidence in. That doesn't mean they're going to win. That doesn't mean they're going to play well. But you can feel pretty confident they're going to compete and compete at a high level. So if they miss shots, they miss shots. But I expect them to play hard, play well, and give fans something to be proud of. So let's start talking about it, shall we?
Let's get it. So again, this is Orange and Blue Bloods, a New York Knicks podcast, Audacy WFAN original. You can get these episodes of Orange and Blue Bloods wherever you get your podcasts, including the free Audacy app. Make sure you hit the auto download feature on your streaming service so you get these episodes every time we drop. Also, be sure to check us out on YouTube as well. You can catch our full episodes and short videos of the episodes that we do here on not just the WFAN YouTube channel, but also the Audacy Sports YouTube channel as well. So check us out there. Make sure you subscribe to the Audacy Sports channel and the WFAN YouTube channel. Make sure you find the audio version of this podcast wherever you get your podcast. So it is officially postseason time in the NBA, and for the Knicks, that means a game one matchup with the Cleveland Cavaliers Saturday at 6 p.m. The Knicks closed the regular season on Sunday with a loss to the Indiana Pacers at home. New York finished the season with a record of 47-35, good enough to earn a 5th seed in the Eastern Conference. That is a 10-win improvement from the previous season, so definitely a step in the right direction for the Knicks after a very disappointing 2022 campaign. The Cavs, meanwhile, finished their season with a 51-31 record, a 7-win improvement from the previous season. Their season wrapped up on Sunday also with a loss to the Hornets. Both teams rested their stars in the season finale as they were just kind of gearing up for this game. So I want to take this conversation to kind of maybe take a step back and look back at what we've seen from the Knicks this season. How were they able, Tommy, in your eyes, to exceed expectations, get that 10-win improvement? A lot of the over-under numbers in Vegas for the season was setting them around 38, 39 wins. For them to reach 47, definitely a big accomplishment. How are they able to do that?
Yeah, I think you got to start with Jalen Brunson, obviously. I mean, he was the big free agent acquisition. Really, other than Hardenstein, all the rotation players were on this prior season's roster. So obviously the addition of Brunson, and obviously he exceeded expectations in terms of points per game and efficiency and all that other stuff. But that doesn't even capture the real true impact that he had on this team, had on this locker room, had in practice sessions, had in film sessions. Everyone you talk to on the team, to a man, has nothing but glowing things to say. Your coaching staff, front office, players, about the immediate impact Jalen Brunson had, and it manifested itself in the win total, the competitiveness of the team. Obviously, top 5 in the league in offensive efficiency, can be directly attributed to that. So while there was a lot of other important pieces, and Randle deserves a ton of credit for having a huge bounce back season. We'll talk about IQ going from really emerging as the likely sixth man, the potential sixth man of the year. Grimes establishing himself as a solid NBA starting shooting guard. The addition of Josh Hart at the deadline. The two-headed monster, Mitchell Robinson, playing the best of his career. Isaiah Hardenstein, a very competent backup, forming arguably the best 1-2 punch at the center and backup center position. All those things should all be weighed and factored into the totality of a 47-win season. But if we are talking about one particular player, I think Brunson gets the lion's share of credit from that respect.
Totally agree. Can't dispute or refute anything regarding Jalen Brunson being the main reason for the Knicks being able to exceed those expectations. It's crazy that we talked for now almost 2 decades how much of a weakness the Knicks point guard position was, and to see them have well above average, I mean, good to elite level point guard play, and what that meant for this team, and what it meant for this franchise, and how it just changed things on the dime, just shows you what we've been saying for a long time, is how important the point guard position is in the NBA. If you don't have one, you're basically playing with your hand tied behind your back. And that's what Nick's been doing for some time. So what Jalen Brunson's been able to do, obviously a big piece. But I think another piece I don't want to get lost in the shuffle with this Knicks season is the team's great job of development of their young players and embracing their young players and getting these guys real minutes. We've talked about Quentin Grimes and his insertion into the starting lineup. I mean, it's crazy to think that to start the season, that was a very debated question. I mean, Evan Fournier was the starting shooting guard coming out of training camp. It's something that was mind-boggling to me and was maddening to me. But Evan Fournier was starting. Derrick Rose was getting key minutes still. And, Cam Reddish was here. He's a young player, obviously, but Cam Reddish was here. And a lot of the guys that Knicks had drafted, some of the guys that they should have been prioritizing, really weren't getting the kind of minutes that they should have been. IQ was not getting the kind of minutes he should have been. McBride was, of course, buried under the bench. Quentin Grimes was getting very limited minutes coming off of the foot injury he dealt with in training camp. And to see how those guys have improved over the course of this season, the Knicks don't get to 47 wins if they don't see that jump. If they're still playing, Rose and Fournier, I don't want to bang on those guys. Those guys are great professionals, and there's no beef at all for me from saying that. But if they're still playing those guys, April 11th, as we record this podcast, I don't think you're talking about the Knicks in the 5th seed for sure. You're probably talking about them playing in a play-in, maybe, and they're probably playing against the Bulls or the Raptors. I mean, they're probably the 9th or 10th team in this situation. I mean, this whole season turned when the rotation changed. So that's a credit to this organization, credit to the front office, credit to Thibodeau for understanding that had to happen for sure. And the development that we've seen in season of these players also a major credit to Thibodeau and his coaching staff, because Emmanuel quickly going from basically nowhere on the stratosphere, he wasn't on the map when it came to 6 Man of the Year candidates, and now comes in as we enter this postseason as the favorite to win the award. I mean, you're getting Quentin Grimes. We talk about how he's been shooting the ball so incredibly well of late. You've seen McBride come in and out of the rotation. Doesn't matter if he's playing or playing not. He's always ready to play. He's always ready to defend. Like, these guys being put into the rotation. Jericho Sims giving these guys quality minutes when guys like Mitchell Robinson had gone down. Like, I do want to make sure that is something that is noted in terms of the importance of those guys and how that helped the Knicks get to this next level.
Yeah, I mean, and speaking, I think the front office again deserves a lot of credit for trading away Alex Burks and Nerlens Noel and not re-signing Taj Gibson and those type of things where, almost forced Tibbs' hands in certain respects. And he just didn't have those guys that he was comfortable with leaning on. And as a result, we saw increased, playing time for Emmanuel Quickly, instead of, being on the bench behind Alex Burks the second half of last season. Obviously, a ton more minutes for Quentin Grimes. So those are things that are all there. And, you mentioned the starting point guard position. And again, it's worth noting. Here's the starting point guards. In opening night, starting point guard, 2011, Tony Douglas. 2012, Ray Felton. 2013, Pablo Prigioni. 2014, Shane Larkin. 2015, Jose Calderon. 2016, D. Rose. 2017, Ramon Sessions. 2018, Trey Burke. 2019, Alonzo Trier. 2020, Elfrid Payton. 2021, the skeleton of Kemba Walker, and then you bring in Jalen Brunson, and the change is so dramatic and so incredible. So all those things certainly factor in, and finally having somebody to captain the ship on the floor, and Jalen Brunson has done that again, incredibly important.
Hearing that list of journeyman point guards reminded me of like seeing the list of Cleveland Browns quarterbacks over the last 20 some odd years. I mean, that it's kind of odd, I think partly because like the Knicks have had so many issues for the last 20 years. Like, I feel like amongst Knicks fans, they've talked a lot about the point guards, but I don't think that's really been talked about like amongst like the rest of the NBA kind of world, the national scene, in terms of what's been wrong with the organization. Point guard didn't get mentioned nearly as much. I think that's why those that were very skeptical of the Brunson signing, I think that's why they missed the boat so much. I think because they didn't understand how much, again, good to great point guard play would change everything for this team, and that's what we've seen this season. So I thought this was something interesting. We heard from RJ Barrett today as we record this podcast on Tuesday, because there are great feels with this team. A lot of people are excited about this team, but there are some fans that are scarred from what happened back in 2021 when the We Here Knicks team got the 4th seed, home field advantage. Atlanta comes in and Trey Burke kind of burns down the Garden. Like, there are some people that are concerned, saying, hey, we've seen this movie before, like, why should we believe in this team as opposed to 2021? Here's what RJ Barrett had to say on that.
I think just one, us having that experience already, it helps, as well as just continuing to work. And we're a lot better than we were. Like, the guys that are on this team that were in that playoff run, we've all grown and we've all gotten better. So that helps. Like I said, the experience helps, and just the guys that we have now, in addition, things been working well, and we just been getting better as a team. So I think we'll be okay.
So RJ there says that we're a better team. The players that were there are better from that experience. They've gotten better individually, and they've added guys since then that make this team different than the 2021 team that struggled in the first round. I think he's right. I 100% agree. I think that if you're a Knicks fan that's concerned about what happened in 2021, that this team are frauds, I think you got to stop living in the past. I think that this is a team that if they don't win, it's not going to be because, this team are frauds. I think they're playing against a team that, quite frankly, may be more talented than that Atlanta Hawks team that they played 2 years ago. But this Knicks team is also way more talented than the Knicks team that played that Hawks team in 2021. So what do you think makes this Knicks team different from the 2021 team in your eyes? Or do you think there's a big difference?
There's a huge difference. 2 words. Elfrid Payton, that was
Yeah.
that was the Knicks starting point guard those first 2 games, who's out of the NBA and was out of the NBA shortly thereafter. Nerlens Noel started at center for that Knicks team. Taj Gibson averaged 27. I'm looking at it right now, 27.6 minutes per game that series. Reggie Bullock 32.5 minutes. Derrick Rose 35 minutes. And Rose played well, so this is not to knock, Bullock or Rose but Elfrid Payton, wasn't a quality starting point guard in the NBA as evidenced by the fact that he was out of the starting lineup and the rotation completely by the end of the series. Having a healthy Mitchell Robinson starting at center, backed up by Isaiah Hartenstein, is a little bit better. And we all love Taj Gibson, is better than the combo of Taj Gibson and Nerlens Noel. Replacing Elfrid Payton with Jalen Brunson is I mean, come on, it's leaps and bounds, and that's not even getting into the bench. The combo of IQ, Hart, Obi Toppin, all those players. Just what's kind of incredible is I'm just looking at those series minutes now, and Obi averaged 13.1 minutes. That was his rookie year. He may play less in his third season.
It's crazy, I know. Right? That's coming off of 34 in the finale against Indiana.
And that's after he averaged 25, 5 and 5 in the last 5 games or so. But listen, to your point, the Cavs are far more talented than that Atlanta Hawks team was, and the Knicks certainly can get beat. Their odds are that Vegas has them installed as a pretty significant, the Cavs as a favorite. Their last I saw, I think, was minus 210. Basically, the implied odds are 67% chance of the Cavs winning the series. That's kind of is what it is, which makes sense. I mean, they have a very talented roster with the all NBA shooting guard, and the Knicks have their own issues. I think it's a lot closer than 50-50. We'll talk about it as the series goes on. Yes, listen, there's, New York fans are going to be naturally pessimistic. New York teams haven't had a lot of success here. Certainly the Knicks haven't had a lot of success. The last time they got to this point, last time they got in the dance, they tripped and stumbled and were eliminated within 5 games. And again, it wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world if they get eliminated in 5 close games this season. The Cavs are just that talented, but again, it won't. But make no mistake that this team is far more talented, and the future is far brighter than it was in 2021.
Yeah, 2021, it was like that was a ragtag group of guys on 1-year deals, guys who were kind of on their last legs. Like Alec Burks, like he was a guy where if he didn't play well that season, he might have been out of the league. You mentioned Elfrid Payton. He was next year basically living on the Phoenix Suns bench before he eventually was jettisoned away. Now he's out of the league. Like that was a different team. Nerlens Noel essentially out of the league right now. Like it was an entirely different team. Those guys played extremely hard. They played extremely motivated, and they bought in. And it does show you that if a team can buy into a coach's philosophy and they go out there and play hard every night, they can rack up wins in the regular season. That's what that team is.
Yes.
This is a different animal. Again, you got Jalen Brunson, who's a legit star at the point guard. You got Julius Randle, who now doesn't have the pressure of having to do everything like he was in that first year, and now he can kind of have that pressure alleviated by a player like Brunson. That goes a long way. And then, like RJ mentioned, like all those young guys you're talking about, all of them are much better than they were. I mean, the biggest one being Emmanuel Quickley. I mean, Quickley was a spark plug, really nice player at that rookie season he had, but I mean, his efficiency, his defense, his passing, his floor leadership, like everything is so exponentially better. So like when you look, and then not to mention, Josh Hart replaces someone like a Bullock, something like that. Like, I mean, it's night and day, some of these changes. So yeah, this is a much better team, and I think that this is a team that is younger, more athletic, and I think that would be more up to the challenge of playing in this first round matchup. I definitely feel that way.
Yeah, and also you make a good point. In the regular season, you can win games on effort and preparedness and hunger, and you can kind of eke out those wins, especially in that shortened 2021 season coming off the pandemic. Exactly. It was all jumbled.
Guys were missing games because of COVID, and
the Knicks were incredibly lucky health-wise that season, unlike many teams. That team is far. This team has even with Randle sitting out the last how many ever games, and Brunson sitting out multiple, for multiple stretches and games in the second half of the season. The talent is night and day. And not to mention the starting lineup, but just guys coming off the bench. Again, and we'll talk about it, in the previewing the series. That's where the Knicks can, if they are going to win the series, I think that's going to be a major fact at the start of the second quarter, start of the fourth quarter. While the Cavs are incredibly talented, 1 through 5, 1 through 6, Knicks can take advantage when those second units are on the floor.
I asked a question to start this podcast, and I asked a question to Ken.
What's so good about Cleveland?
What is so good about Cleveland? I mean, it's in a serious manner, because like we have a Cleveland Cavaliers team that won 51 games. We know Donovan Mitchell very well, unfortunately, because of what happened over the summer, and we followed him over the course of the season, where he's had probably the best season of his career. Evan Mobley could be one of the finalists for Defensive Player of the Year. Darius Garland, a very talented point guard, former All-Star from the year before. Jared Allen used to play in Brooklyn, played in the city, another former All-Star. Who are these Cleveland Cavaliers? What do Knicks fans have to look forward to or be worried about coming into this series?
Started doing the preview for my newsletter on Monday, so I was digging into the numbers, and this is a really good team, man. Like I know casual, Knicks fans, like that even fans that are heavily invested in the NBA, names like Evan Mobley and even the Jared Allens and Isaac Okoros and Darius Garland, familiar with them. We know Mitchell, of course, but the way they play together, well coached team by Bickerstaff, and first and foremost, these guys defend, man, like really at a very high level. And then you watch tape, and it's stunning. How well they cover space and challenge shooters, and the proof's in the pudding. First in the NBA in opponent's point per game, only team in the NBA average, that allows fewer than 107 points per contest. First in the NBA in defensive rating, only team in the NBA allowing fewer than 110 points per 100 possessions. Held teams under 100 points 24 times this season. In today's NBA, that says an awful lot. Second in the NBA net rating, basically, powered by this defense. But they're also quality shooting. They had the second highest field goal percentage in franchise history this season. Obviously, Donovan Mitchell's the head of the snake in that respect, but Darius Garland is also an incredibly talented offensive player. And the Cavs are one of just 3 teams, the Sixers and the Celtics being the other 2, to rank in the top 10 in the NBA in both offensive and defensive efficiency. They were 8th in the NBA in offensive efficiency at 115.5 points per game. 17. The other thing is, even when they get down, they can come back. 17 wins this season when trailing by at least 10 points. So I think that could kind of be a theme, as you'll see, the Cavs race ahead and get out to a big lead. Knicks will come back and fight it off. If the Knicks get out ahead, they're going to let the Cavs back in the game. It's going to be a game of runs, and the Cavs have shown that well. So we can kind of get into specifics, and we'll do a little bit today and more as the week drags on. But just looking in totality, this is a really talented team, a very good team. They play well both sides of the floor. And when all guys are healthy, we'll see if Isaac Okoro, who's dealing with a knee injury, he's their starting small forward when healthy. He'll probably be tasked with guarding. They'll probably put him on Jalen Brunson. We'll talk about how that cross matchups could impact the rest of the team, and why I think because of that, one of the 2 smaller guards is going to be, they're going to try to hide him on RJ Barrett, basically daring Barrett to shoot. So we'll talk about all that stuff, and we'll talk about how that'll impact it. But make no mistake, big picture, this is not a team that lucked into the 4 seed. This is not a one-man show with, stop Donovan Mitchell, you're going to win the series. They have a ton of guys. They're coached well. They're unselfish. They compete defensively, a lot like the Knicks in certain respects. They don't have a top 5 player. They don't have a top 10 player in the NBA, but they have a lot of good pieces that perform well together, good chemistry, good cohesion, especially on the defensive end. And it's going to make it for, it's going to make the Knicks, if the Knicks are going to win this series, they're going to have to play their best basketball. They can't, only play offense. They can't, get by playing just good defense and missing shots. Knicks are going to have to play as well as they played all season to knock this team off.
Yeah, this is going to be a tall task. And I think I love that you really started with defense, because I think for the people, I don't want to call them people don't follow or casual. Right. I think people will just kind of watch this team and kind of look at the roster and say, oh, okay, Donovan Mitchell, stats, offense, scoring. And they can score the ball, no question about that. But I mean, their defense is borderline scary. I mean, they're first in the NBA in 3-pointers allowed in terms of fewest. Second in the NBA in 3-pointers made. So good luck getting 3-point shots up against this team. Good luck scoring around the rim against this team with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. It's interesting because Garland and Mitchell have been maligned throughout their career for their defense.
Yep.
But the defense that they have created in Cleveland with those two bigs playing down low, and then the other guys that kind of come in, whether it's Okoro, whether it's Lamar Stevens, some of these other guys, like they have these other defenders that can kind of hide these guys, or they can kind of funnel these star guards on other teams to these twin towers, and they struggle. And what they do have, while they may not be big or strong, they are quick, so they can get out the shooters. They can rotate really well, as you mentioned. So this is a extremely good defensive team, which makes this matchup really interesting because the Knicks are one of the best offensive teams in the NBA, which I think is surprises people when you think of Tom Thibodeau teams. But this is a team that is, I think I saw the Knicks Muse had it as the 4th best offensive rating in NBA history, which is kind of crazy to think about. But with the way the Knicks rebound, particularly how many offensive opportunities they get from the offensive glass and the way they're able to be efficient in the half court, it presents a problem for a lot of teams. And what I expect to see in this series is a lot of doubling of Jalen Brunson. I thought what Biggerstaff said after the game, I think their finale game, when they talked about previewing this series, here's what he said about Jalen Brunson real quick and what he did to them the last time they played when he had 48.
Game that Jalen Brunson had put us on high alert. And, I think that's a good thing for us, to have that appropriate fear of your opponent. So again, we'll use it, we'll watch the film, we'll figure it out, and we'll be better.
That sounds like a guy who is not going to let Jalen Brunson beat them. To me, that sounds like a guy who said, okay, we saw what Jalen Brunson can do. We know he's a bad man. We're not going to, disrespect him by playing him single coverage. So I think if you're the Knicks, Tom Thibodeau, that coaching staff, we know some of Thibodeau's greatest weaknesses throughout his career has been adjustments and making adjustments quickly. They have to adjust quickly to what happens when they force the ball out of Brunson's hands, because that is definitely going to be plan A for Cleveland. And I think Knicks will be able to get good shots if they do that. They tried to do it a little bit in the second half of that game they played a couple of weeks ago. Obviously, you're playing a team is not as much preparation as a game like game one, but they tried to do it a little bit, and we saw Nick got some great shots, and Grimes had a big game. A lot of other guys had went off in that game. The Knicks got to be ready for that, and it means that these other ancillary pieces beyond Randle have to be ready to shoot and have to be ready to score. You mentioned RJ Barrett; he's been a nightmare from behind the three. Whether it's him deciding to take it to the basket or finding a way to make these shots, like these guys can't be ducks when they get the ball, because I think Brunson's going to have to give it up a lot in this series.
Absolutely. I will note that Okoro did not play in that 48-point game.
Yes.
And Bickerstaff did mention that. What were you saying?
I was going to say, I mean, he has a sleeve on his knee. I know he was shooting in practice. I don't think he was a full participant either from what I saw today. So he's also kind of up in the air.
Agreed. It's and understandably so. Neither Bickerstaff's going to tell you how Okoro doing.
Right.
Tibbs is not going to tell you how Randall's doing. We'll talk about that in the next segment. They're going to be, again, if you're Tibbs, you want Bickerstaff and his staff to spend time preparing if Obi Toppin's going to start game one, if Julius Randle's going to start game one. You want to put that kind of uncertainty and make them dedicate time to something that they may not see. Yada yada yada. So Cavs will do the same. So just as far as Okoro is concerned, Bickerstaff did mention, hopefully we'll get him back. It would be a big boost, without saying he's coming back, hinting that if he's back, that's the guy that's going to be tasked with slowing down Jalen Brunson. So it certainly gives him more options. And then, but I agree with you. Clearly, as he mentioned, that 48-point outburst was a wake-up call. And they're not going to, ideally, there's two schools of thought though, and the Knicks will face the same thing. Do you throw two guys at Donovan Mitchell and prevent him from beating you single-handedly? Or do you let him get his 44 points and prevent anybody else from getting going. These are conversations that Knicks fans have had for 30 years. When do you let Jordan get 55 and not let Pippen score, and B.J. Armstrong get open shots, and Steve Kerr and John Paxson, etc. It didn't work. Jordan always found a way, and Donovan Mitchell certainly isn't on that level. But these are conversations that you have, and it'll be had after game one and after game two, and when the guy's a bad game, and these are the type of adjustments. But yeah, and again, we'll talk about it more in depth. But it's why me, and just it's kind of thinking ahead. It's why RJ Barrett to me is the X factor in the series. If they're going to double team Brunson, then Randle's going to get more shots. But again, you're not going to let a guy that the team's leading scorer, Julius Randle, 25 points, get easy looks either. Night in, night out. Exactly. I suspect they will dare and put up a big sign and say, RJ Barrett, we are daring you to shoot 3-pointers. Barrett shooting 22% over the last month from downtown, really struggled with his shot, with his confidence. Does Barrett take those threes? Can he make them? Or does he use that distance and that spacing as a red carpet into the lane, get to the basket, and make things happen that way, create shots for himself, create shots for his teammates, bully ball. If he's got a smaller defender on him, be it Mitchell or Garland, can he get those guys in foul trouble? Can he post up, work the high post, work the low post, where he's comfortable operating from, and at least make those guys work on the defensive end? Even better if he can draw foul trouble, because as we talked about, one of the biggest advantages the Knicks have is their depth. If Brunson gets in foul trouble or is not as effective, IQ comes in. If Grimes or Barrett is struggling, Hart comes in, and he's probably an upgrade over both those guys, or can be on any given night. Whereas if the Cavs go to the bench, and Garland's not effective, but Garland has 2 fouls, in the first 7 minutes, then you have to rely on Ricky Rubio, or Neto. Karis LeVert can play some point, but the point being, the Knicks, one of their greatest strengths is depth, whereas the Cavs, it's not the case. So all that stuff will be factored in, and that's what makes playoff series so fascinating. Night after night, quarter after quarter, adjustment to adjustment. It's why it's so much fun.
I love the playoffs. Love it. It's like a soap opera. It's like watching a movie. The twists and turns, changes. So many things will happen over the course of this series. It won't be fun, but
it's like we're spoiled nowadays because the show will drop on Netflix and you can binge 12 straight hours.
Yeah, exactly.
Back in the day, you'd have to Thursday night, you'd have to watch a show, then wait till the next Thursday night. That's what this playoff series is. Game one, you got to wait 72 hours for game two. We can talk about it, we can rehash it, we can preview, we can Monday morning quarterback, but we still have to wait. There's no spoiler alerts like you watched it. Now you just have to wait for the next one.
Yeah, exactly. So it's my favorite time of the year. I love the NBA playoffs. My favorite. I mean, obviously basketball's favorite sport, but it's my favorite postseason by far. So the fact that the Knicks are in it and they have a really competitive matchup here in the first round should be a lot of fun. Knicks Cavs, 6 p.m. Saturday in Cleveland. So let's give you guys that update I mentioned on Julius Randle. So he is the key Knick whose game one status is up in the air right now. Jalen Brunson says his hand is good, ready to go. He can do whatever he needs to do. So no worries there. Randle has been recovering from a sprained ankle that he injured on March 29th against the Heat. Tom Thibodeau said this about Julius Randle's participation in practice and his likelihood of being able to play.
He did some, making steady progress. So just take it day to day.
Did he do a contact?
No.
When you say some, is he running? Like what?
He's doing some running, shooting, scripting, that sort of thing. He meets with medical every day. So, when he's ready to go, he's ready to go. But good, steady progress each day, a little bit better.
Is game one a possibility?
Well, game one is Saturday. So we'll see.
So, Tibbs trying to keep as close to the vest as possible there, to be expected, with this being the major storyline of this series right now, since there are no games played. Will Randle play? What is availability? How good is he doing? What I heard there, Tommy, I don't know how you felt like this, but I heard, seems to me almost like that whole re-evaluation thing kind of maybe kind of thrown out. Like, if he's already practicing, I assume he's been evaluated to at least practice. So I know the Knicks, when he first got injured, said he'll be reevaluated in 2 weeks, would set him up for that this Friday to be the day he gets reevaluated. So that was a lot more worrisome. He's saying, all right, he can't even touch a basketball or get on the court before Friday. How the hell is he going to play on a Saturday or Sunday? Now we know this game is going to be on Saturday. How the hell would he play on a Saturday, though? It's the playoffs. So, and this is where all bets are off. It almost sounds like, Tibbs saying he's meeting medical every day. So it almost sounds like that whole reevaluation thing is kind of not happening anymore. And he's now kind of day to day, I think, is something I heard Tibbs say also in this press conference. So how's your feel about Randle at this point, based on the little you heard from Tibbs and his ability to play on Saturday?
The little we heard from Tibbs was encouraging. The really good news and first bit of encouraging news was Sunday before the game, when there was a picture posted to Twitter of Randle sitting with his family, with his kids on his lap, and most importantly, no boot, no walking boot on that left ankle. Really good sign that he was able to shed the walking boot essentially a week after the initial injury. Because again, and then you saw him during the game. They showed him, I think he had some cool books on. The fact, because when you're even a little bit dinged up, and we saw with Jalen Brunson still wearing that soft cast hand, and anytime you're near the bench, that means you're within 3 feet of 6'7", 250-pound men running around, and a ball could get flung into your foot. A guy could fall and trip into the bench. The fact that Randle's walking around without a limp, and he and was able to shed the walking boot, very good sign. And then we heard today, you can't really ask for much more than the fact that he was back on the court. No, he's not dunking. No, he's not sprinting. But again, the fact that he was clear, and it's non-contact stuff, but the fact that he's cleared for any game scripting, getting some shots up, walking on the floor, really good signs. As you mentioned, the initial diagnosis or the initial announcement the Knicks had made 2 Thursdays ago, where they reevaluated in 2 weeks. So it would actually be the 13th was the date that they would reevaluate. So that was Thursday. I'm sure they're going to do all this stuff, but yeah, again, to your point, they would not have let him get on the court if they thought there was a chance he could re-injure himself. Obviously, they're going to err on the side of caution. If he can get in a full practice on Friday, I don't expect. I'm sure they're going to list him as questionable, and probably list him as game time decision. I don't care if he.
That would be smart too. I think, regardless of whether he's healthy or not.
100%. If it wasn't for the gambling stuff and the need to be somewhat honest, they would probably list him doubtful up until 35 minutes before game time. Where an Auerbach would have done. That's what Riley would. That's just they didn't have all these these highfalutin accuracy, 75% chance he's going to play, yada yada yada. So don't read anything into that. When the Knicks list them questionable on the first. The very good news will be if he's able to get cleared for practice, and then even then they'll tone it down. I think certainly he's at the very least trending in the right direction. And I would say there's I wouldn't say a much greater likelihood. I will say there's a better than 50% chance, I feel, as of we're recording this on Tuesday afternoon, that he suits up for game 1 Saturday evening. Certainly a lot could change. He could have swelling after he gets a little bit increased work. He could tweak it in practice on Wednesday. He could tweak it in practice on shoot around Saturday morning. There's no guarantee. You're dealing with an ankle injury. These things can have a tendency to linger. The things we know about Randle: he's a tank. He's durable. He's competitive. Any chance that there's any chance for him to be out there, he's going to be out there. So I think certainly the last 2 days have been nothing but good news on that front. If we're reading the tea leaves.
Yeah. Hearing this is as good as you can expect, as you mentioned, Tommy. I mean, that ankle injury, when he went down, it did not look good. I was very concerned, and that's why we talked about it in the last podcast. I said, look, I'm kind of waiting for that chance for Randle maybe to be out, and maybe this is Obi Toppin time in game 1 and 2 of the playoffs, and Nick may have to steal one without Randle. And hearing Thibodeau today, hearing that Randle was practicing, that he was running, if he's doing all that, then I would at this point be shocked if he does not play. Now, bad things can happen. Let's knock on wood that they don't. Obviously, between now and Saturday, but they're gone this far to allow him to get back on the court to practice game script with the team. then I think that means that he's probably going to be good to go, barring any major setbacks, which is great news because I think that as important and as great as it's been to see Obi Toppin's, emergence in the last 4 or 5 games of the regular season, something we saw last season as well. I think the Knicks, in order to win the series, are going to need Randle at some point to be 100% or close to 100%. I'm not saying that, like I said, I thought they could have started the series. Maybe he sits the first 2 games and maybe they still win. I think that could have happened. But they couldn't play a whole 7-game series, I think, without Julius Randle. That would have been probably too tall a task, just like it would have been too tall to ask Jalen Brunson to carry Dallas for an entire series against Utah last season. Luka came back in that series, and that helped Dallas get over the hump while Jalen kind of held him down for the first 2 or 3 games. So I think that the fact that Randle's headed this way is great because they're going to need him to beat this Cavs team, as we mentioned, maybe the best defensive team in the NBA.
No question. And the other thing to keep in mind, regardless of how you feel about Randle and Obi and how Toppin should have got more minutes, or maybe they should have traded Randle, and all those are valid arguments and arguments we can have.
Yep.
The Knicks can't adjust on it's very tall order to beat the Cavs team when you've been practicing together as a 6-month as one collective unit, and now all of a sudden say, okay, we're no longer a passing team, we're going to run the ball.
You don't want to go to your plan C in the playoffs.
Exactly. No matter how talented that plan C and how much upside and to try to figure that out on the fly is very, very difficult. So those are all things to keep in mind. And again, as even unless you're a diehard crazy Cavs fan, if you're an NBA fan, even if you like the Cavs, you want to see these 2 teams clash at full strength. This is arguably the most attractive first round matchup. This obviously is a Knicks podcast, but subjectively speaking, I mean, there's some really intriguing West, out in the West, but in terms of the East, there's not that much, series you can get really jazzed about. I think you ask like 9 out of 10 fans are going to tell you that if the series not involving their team, this is the series that they want to watch.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people don't really expect much from the Nets in that Sixers series. I think there are people interested in who wins this play-in between the Celtics, the Heat and the Hawks, because that Celtics matchup. I think intriguing. I don't know if I'd be worried about the Celtics fan, but I think either one of those teams, whoever wins, that's an intriguing first round matchup. I think whoever plays the Bucks is, getting F5'd out of the playoffs. To take a wrestling reference or Brock Lesnar.
The one thing though is if Middleton's not healthy.
Well, that is true.
The Bucks can still should definitely.
I mean, they've been fine so much this season without him. It's they look serious. Like they look really scary right now. So,
but I think to get out of that second and third round,
that's where it has to get tricky. Yeah, to make the run that they expect to make, which is to the NBA Finals.
Yes,
you're right. Middleton is going to be super important. Not having them last season probably cost them another shot at going to the NBA Finals. Quite frankly,
I think they win the championship.
Celtics. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think the Celtics beat them if Middleton plays. So, so we'll see what happens with Randle, man. But it all looks like all signs are a go in terms of, at least for now, him being able to play in Game 1. So let's wrap the show up here with something real quick that is important because it does kind of involve the Knicks, at least tangentially. The NBA has launched an investigation against the Dallas Mavericks after the team elected not to play many of its key players down the stretch for the regular season. The Mavs were still in play-in contention when the team decided to pull the plug on the season, benching Kyrie Irving and 5 other players in a crucial game against the Chicago Bulls. Luka Doncic, who was not happy with the decision, who demanded to play in the game, played just the first quarter before being pulled. The NBA spokesman Mike Bass said the NBA commenced an investigation into the facts and circumstances surrounding the Dallas Mavericks roster decision and game conduct with respect to last night's Bulls-Mavericks game, including the motivations behind those actions. So prior to the game, Jason Kidd said this: "Its decisions sometimes are hard in this business. We're trying to build a championship team. With this decision, this is maybe a step back, but hopefully it leads to going forward." He also mentioned that this was a decision that was made by management, not the coaching staff. So really interesting thing that Jason Kidd would admit, essentially, that they were willing to take a quote-unquote step back to go forward by not playing their players in the most important game of the season for them. The Mavs entered that game tied with the Bulls for the 10th best lottery odds in this year's draft. That is important because the Mavs owe the Knicks a top 10 protected lottery pick from the Kristaps Porzingis trade. So if this pick lands in the top 10, then they get to keep the pick. But if it lands outside the top 10, they would not have kept the pick. We talked about this a little bit last week, and now it's become one of the biggest stories in the NBA as we head into the playoffs. Still, this is still a hot topic. How do you think the Mavs? Well, A, how do you think the NBA should handle this Mavs situation regarding this tanking? And B, are you a proponent, like some have been, that the Knicks should get this lottery pick because the Mavs tanked away the season, tanked the chance at possibly finishing 11th in the NBA's worst records?
Yeah, I don't think the Knicks should get the pick. I don't think they will get the pick. So I'll say that because for numerous reasons. But I will say this: what happened in Dallas was a disgrace. It was a black eye on the NBA. It really sets a bad precedent. Again, the NBA has gone to great lengths to convince fans that the regular season matters. Because if the regular season doesn't matter, that's going to cost the NBA ticket sales. It's going to cost the NBA ratings points. It's really going to hurt business. It's going to hurt the bottom line if fans think like the end. We've seen what happened with the NCAA. The tournament's awesome, but it basically renders the regular season meaningless. Fans, unless you're go to the school or a real diehard fan of, a Big Ten team, it's hard to get invested in the action because it basically doesn't matter. That's what the NBA has really done. It's gone out of its way to prevent from happening. We've seen that just recently with you have to play at least 65 regular season games to cut down on the back-to-backs, etc. And we've seen it a few years ago when the Adam Silver and the league introduced the play-in tournament. And also evened out the lottery odds. So if you finish with the worst record, you still have the same odds of getting the number one overall pick as the team that finishes with the third worst record, fourth worst record. So this is a problem on a grand scale for the NBA. People have said, "Oh, teams have been tanking forever. This is no different than that." This is an unprecedented event. Again, as EJ mentioned, as of Friday morning, 72 hours left in the regular season, the Cavs were essentially tied the Mavs. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
The Mavs were essentially tied with the Thunder for that final 10th play-in spot. What they had to do was win 2 games against a Bulls team, which was sitting out their 2 best players. And the Mavs were 8.5-point favorites that morning, and then beat the Spurs team, one of the at home, both games at home. The Spurs team, one of the worst teams in the NBA. If they win those 2 games, take care of business, which they were heavily favored to do so. They just had to hope that Memphis could beat OKC in the season finale on Sunday. Was it likely? Probably not, because Memphis was going to sit its starters. Most likely. Obviously, the Mavs didn't know it at the time. Maybe they want to get a fresh rep. Even that being the case, there's no guarantee that OKC is going to chase, heartily that final 10 seed because they've sat SGA in games previously. Neither here nor there. Again, the Mavs threw in the towel, quit on the season when they were mathematically still alive for the postseason. This wasn't a team in January deciding to trade a fringe 34-year-old good player and letting their top 8 pick get additional minutes. This was 3 days prior to the end of the season, saying, thumbing, and in my opinion, thumbing their nose at the league. Keep in mind, this is a team, and this is not your typical 8 seed. This isn't the Jazz, whom it would be a cool story if they got in the playoffs and then got destroyed by Denver. This is a team featuring the second leading scorer in the NBA, Luka Doncic, one of the most talented and remarkable players on the planet, and Kyrie Irving, a Hall of Famer in his prime, whom they had just traded a first-round pick and 2 other starters for like 6 weeks prior to this decision. Again, I think Cuban was upset about the ruling. I think he was upset about the officiating when they didn't get that game. They didn't get that game overturned when they protested it. I think it was for a host of reasons. And he decided to basically thumb his nose at the NBA and Adam Silver and say, "I dare you to do something," because that, in my opinion, that's what it was. He's daring the league to react and because Silver has gone on record. If you do something intentionally to lose games and games aren't on the record, justice will be swift, etc. So he's put the league in a difficult spot, and I think the league wants to come down. And just wrapping up here, as I circle back to the beginning, I think stripping them of a first round pick would be a monstrous decision, and just handing it to the Knicks that complicates a whole host of other issues. So then you're benefiting another team. I think they would just, if anything, they would strip the pick, and then the Knicks would get the same protections roll over, etc. But again, I don't even think that'll happen. I think it'll be a hefty fine, $500,000, $1 million, $2 million, maybe a second rounder. So they'll make as big a statement and a grand as statement as possible without actually impacting the encore product of Dallas would be my suspicion.
I tell you what, this is going to be very interesting. This is one of those moments where I wonder what would David Stern do, because we've heard the kind of sometimes legendary or infamous stories of how David Stern put the fear in man when he thinks that the league is being compromised in any way. And I agree with a lot of your sentiments. This was horrendous that this happened. I mean, this was so egregious because, like you said, tanking happens in the NBA. I personally don't even have as much an issue with a lot of tanking that does go on in the NBA.
Agreed. I think you can make an argument often that it makes sense.
It makes sense, and then I think you make a case also that like most of the time it doesn't hurt the league as much as maybe people think. When the Pistons are playing, they're a terrible team. When they're playing, they're 3-4 big men at the same time. Nobody's watching them anyway. Like it doesn't matter.
Totally. And my thing about tanking, the reason I don't have a problem with it is I think every franchise, the goal of every sports franchise should be to win a championship. And sometimes it may benefit you to lose a game. It may put you closer to winning a championship if you lose a game or a couple games because you're giving your young guys younger experience who may help you win a championship down the line, or you're putting yourself, instead of having the second worst record in the league, instead of being 13-49, you're 12-50, and that puts you in a better position to get a guy like Wembanyama. But again, if the goal is to win a championship, the Mavs were on the precipice of getting into the dance and giving themselves a chance to win a championship. And
that's where the problem is.
This is as open as the Western Conference has ever been in the last decade, and they didn't give themselves a chance to do that.
Yeah, that's where the problem is, that the Mavs mess with the integrity of the playoffs and the play-in with how they operate this. Those teams that were never going to make the playoffs and they want to tank, they want to play guys in the G League. Oh, hit my light here. Like they could do all that. I don't think that really matters. I don't think anybody really cares about that. But a team that's actually in playoff contention, deciding, oh no, we're gonna pull ourselves out at the last minute. Like we saw the Blazers, they had been in playoff contention, but they pulled Dame Lillard weeks ago. Like, so they never got to a point where we could say, oh, what's going on? Like to pull at the last minute and do this is a problem. And I think that if David Stern was around, I think that there would be a very swift penalty. I mean, the first thing I thought about was what happened with Joe Smith and the Minnesota Timberwolves. And he maybe was too harsh on the Minnesota Timberwolves. He took 5 first-round picks away from the Minnesota Timberwolves for that ordeal with Joe Smith, which if you don't know, you can look it up. They essentially signed Joe Smith to a bunch of one-year deals so that they could sign him to a longer-term deal that they already had agreed to, and it was circumventing the cap and how they did it. And David Stern dropped the hammer. I feel like if David Stern was the commissioner today and this happened, I think he would drop the hammer. I have not seen Adam Silver be that aggressive, at least not since the Donald Sterling situation. So I don't anticipate he'll be that aggressive. But I do think that voiding the pick would be the right thing to do. That's what I would do. I would say, I know the Heat, I think the Sixers last year and this year, they had second round picks just voided because of what happened with Kyle Lowry and PJ Tucker this year. So like the 57th pick, I think, of the second round this year for the Sixers, like it's just nothing. There's no pick there. Like that's essentially what I would do for this lottery pick. I'd say, okay, you are removed from the lottery. Well, we just put you at 10, which is where your spot would have been, but the 10th pick just won't exist. You just lost your pick. That I think is the only way to really, solve this, because you can't have this. Like this is something that you can't allow this to be a precedent of teams to say, okay, we can play it up until the last day or so of the season and decide, you know what, we're gonna pull ourselves out and decide that we're gonna do this, because this was so like kind of unprecedented because of also the circumstances. Like most of the time, a team, You make the lottery, you make the playoffs, you make the lottery. You're talking between the 14th to 15th pick. That 14th pick, like, never has a chance to be number one pick or top 4. So a lot of times there's no difference. So there's really no impetus to tank your way into the lottery when you're that close to the playoffs. That's why the NBA thought the playing situation would solve all this.
Yes.
But because of the whole protection situation,
yes, it was a perfect
that made
storm.
this thing a lot more interesting. I kind of wonder, the CBA's already ratified, but if this, I don't know if that's why it's important they do something, because if they don't do something and this becomes a trend, this I think will be something that we talked about 7 years from now, saying, hey, they have to maybe adjust what lottery protections you can actually put on draft picks and trades, because otherwise this is something that could happen in the future.
That's where again, I don't think it's a precursor to what's going to happen in the future, because
so unique.
It was a perfect storm. Any team that's close to a play-in game wants to make the play-in game. The players want to make the play-in. The coaches.
Yeah, I mean, the Thunder, in theory, like, they're a team that could use a lottery pick, but like, they're trying to make the play-in because that's extra money, that's great experience. Like,
exactly,
it works.
The benefit of experience. You got to, if you win that game and get in the playoffs, and you have 2. That's another home game. If you get in the playoffs, you have at least 2 more home games. That's hundreds of $1 million, tens of millions of dollars in the owner's pocket. He's gonna push for like there's no tomorrow. Cuban is it's the perfect storm of. Not only are they on the outside, they'd have to win their last 2 games, and they needed help from the Grizzlies, but the protections is what made it so incredible. In other words, if the Mavs had their pick, whether it was 10, 9, 8, 11, 13, they don't even think about it. They try to get in the play-in tournament and see what happens, because even if they get in the play-in tournament and win the championship, it's not greatly impacted. So that's the thing. This is what I will say lastly. Why I'm voiding the pick is a major penalty, and you heard it how egregious I thought this was. Cuban's argument is going to be, that's cool, take my pick, but if you don't take the Pacers pick, and you don't take the Pistons pick, and you don't take the Jazz pick, then I'm going to burn.
I think he'll sue. I think it would be a lawsuit. I think he would sue the NBA.
100%, because in theory the Jazz technically did the same thing 2 nights prior. They sat Lauri Markkanen and most of their good players when they were still technically alive for the play-in. You and I both know that even if the Jazz get in the playoff tournament, they're almost definitely going to lose one of the first 2 games and not even make the playoffs. But basketball fans know that the Mavs have a far greater chance of, if they get into the dance, they're far more dangerous than a Jazz team, with Lauri Markkanen and Colin Sexton and company. A good team, but they're, it'd be shocking if they won a couple games.
But I think the one difference though would be that Jason Kidd said in these press conferences, we are tanking. Basically.
If I'm Mark, 100% agree. If I'm Mark Cuban, I am furious. If I care, I think he's almost picking a fight. So he let Kid ramble on. If I was an attorney and that was my client, in other words, if I was guilty of some wrongdoing and a client speaking on the face of the company, it's like if a company got sued for sexual harassment or something, and the CEO saying, "Listen, come on, girls got to stop worrying about this."
Yeah, boys would be boys, something like that. Right?
Exactly. He didn't understand the implications and the word and the way that language can be parsed if it comes to a lawsuit. Everything he said was really was not what you want to hear. From from the guy speaking for the franchise. So all that stuff, and then but I'll just say this: the long-term implications. There's certainly a scenario which exists where this really, really backfires on Cuban, basically trying to show up the league, because depending on how Luka Doncic reacts to this situation, he said he wasn't happy. Listen, would anybody be stunned if a year from now he demands it? There was an ESPN article about it. This stuff starts leaking out. Anytime you quit, you force your team to quit when they still have a chance to make the playoffs. Again, 48 hours before the end of the season. That sets we talk about culture and say what you want about Tibbs. Tibbs would rather quit than give up a chance to go into than win a game to get into a play-in tournament. There's a lot of things that this will have ripple effects. It'll be fascinating to see how it plays out.
Adam Silver, all eyes are on you, and a lot of those eyes are in New York City. A lot of people want to know if this could benefit the Knicks in any way. So we'll be an interesting story to follow. I know we've gone long here. Thank you guys so much for checking out this episode of Orange and Blue Bloods. Tommy, let people know they can find you
at Tommy Beer on Twitter.
You can find me, EJ_Stewart on Twitter, Action EJ on Instagram. Again, thank you guys for checking us out. Of course, it's Orange and Blue Bloods, a WFAN Audacy original, a podcast you can get wherever you get your podcasts, including the free Audacy app. Make sure you hit the auto download feature on your streaming service so you get these episodes every time we drop. We'll have plenty more episodes this week talking about these Knicks playoffs. So make sure you keep it locked here. Also, give us a rating and review while you're at it on your audio streaming service. Also, check us out on YouTube. You can catch us both on the WFAN and Audacy Sports YouTube channels. Thank you guys again for checking us out. For Tommy, I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace.